Silverlight with Jesse Liberty, and that's a talk for all levels. So whether you're a beginner or an intermediate or maybe an expert, and you want to learn more about Silverlight, join us next week, 11 a.m. Pacific, and on February 24th, we're going to have Chris Maunder from the Code Project, just talking about the Code Project. And then we're going to be talking about Gaia AJAX March 10. And in April, we have Zane, our very own Zane, is going to talk about Visual Studio tips and tricks. And then Nikhil Kotari is going to be talking about Script Sharp. And we have more talks coming up. We don't have all of them listed here, so you might want to jot down some of these addresses. Maybe get on our calendar or just join our group if you're not yet in there. Check out. Okay. Scott, are you there?
Yep, I just joined in.
Okay, glad to have you here. And we already have lots of people and lots of questions. So I don't want to waste any more time and just let you jump in there.
Okay, great. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for coming to this event today. For those of you who haven't done one of these webcasts before, basically you can use the live meeting tool to ask questions throughout the event, and basically I'll try to answer as many as I can over the next 90 minutes. So any questions, fair game, fire away as much as possible. In terms of, I think over the last, couple of months, we've kind of released a number of betas and a number of previews of various products. I'll kick off with that. Hopefully the next 2 or 3 months are going to be pretty exciting in terms of releases as some of these products kind of reach kind of the final stage of getting out there. Probably one of the biggest ones will be obviously the Visual Studio 2010 and .NET 4 launch. That's going to be happening in April, so about 2 months from now. We just shipped the beta earlier this week, we shipped the release candidate earlier this week. So far the feedback's been pretty good. If you haven't tried it out, definitely try it out, and if you find any issues, please send me an email directly about them. My email address is scottgu@microsoft.com. And we'll make sure to follow up on all those. And we're trying to find and fix the last few issues as quickly as possible. So obviously .NET 4 and VS 2010 is going to be a major release. There's a ton of stuff there for all types of development, whether it's ASP.NET, whether it's WPF, Silverlight, Windows Forms, data, new language features, new enterprise features, new coding features. Hopefully just a pretty major update all up. We then will have Silverlight 4 coming out a little bit after that. It's the major release of Silverlight. Includes a ton of new capabilities. And really it's the first version of Silverlight that I'd say exclusively for line of business applications and for out-of-browser applications where we really have a very powerful story end-to-end between the runtime and the tools all integrated. We have ASP.NET MVC 2. Which will be part of .NET 4 and VS 2010, but also will shift down level before that on .NET 3.5 and can be used with VS 2008, which is kind of a nice addition of our existing MVC framework. And you're going to hear more about mobile kind of in the months ahead, and we have some good things cooking with that. I think one of the things, so there's lots of features, lots of new capabilities coming out. Usually when that happens, I usually get kind of 2 responses. One is, hey, I'm really excited to try all this stuff. And then also, oh my gosh, I just don't have time to learn all this stuff. I feel overwhelmed. And one of the things that I think is nice about the releases that are coming out over the next couple of months is, for the most part, they actually build on everything that you know of today. And so especially with the VS 2010 and .NET 4 release, we really try to focus on not creating thousands of new features that require a lot of learning and a lot of new concepts to master, but really focus a lot on the fit and finish and how do we make your existing apps significantly better. And an example, both the ASP.NET team, the WPF team, kind of had a theme that they focused on with this release, which is, what are the top 10 things that suck? And literally phrased it that way and got people to vote on things. And really try to make sure, okay, yeah, let's improve our markup output. Let's make view state better to manage. Let's enable better SEO URLs. On the WPF side, it was things like, hey, let's improve text rendering quality. Let's improve accessibility support. Let's improve terminal server access. And so, really focusing on kind of features that impact people on a day-to-day basis, make them more productive, and doesn't require a ton of new learning in order to take advantage of it. Hopefully that translates into there's a bunch of things you can immediately take advantage of out of the box and be productive and hopefully not feel overwhelmed. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and start attacking some of these questions. So again, feel free to fire away, and I will try to answer as many as possible and see what I can do here. So let me just expand this window and get started. So Bill Eckert asked the question, why is Silverlight 4 not supported in the 2010 RC release? This is a question that a lot of people have asked this week. Basically, for those of you who haven't seen, Silverlight 4 currently is not yet supported with the VS 2010 RC release, whereas it is supported with the VS 2010 Beta 2 release. The main reason it isn't supported yet with the RC is we have a new version of Silverlight coming out, which is the Silverlight 4 RC. The tooling for Visual Studio 2010 RC targets the Silverlight 4 RC, which hasn't shipped yet. And so what we, just from a matter of time and focus, we didn't want to backport all the tooling to target the old Silverlight 4 beta that we shipped in October or November. So instead we're actually holding the tooling support until the Silverlight 4 RC hits the street, at which point obviously the VS 2010 RC will work with Silverlight 4 as well. So it's more just a matter of timing. Very people said, oh, does that mean that you don't like Silverlight? No, that definitely does not mean that. It just simply means one of scheduling. Once the Silverlight 4 RC comes out, the tooling obviously will come with that as well. That isn't too far away from when that's happening. If you are working on a large Silverlight 4 project today, you can send me email and we see if we can get you earlier access to those bits. Otherwise, the plan is once the Silverlight 4 release candidate goes public, the tooling will be updated to support that as well. In the meantime, the VS 2010 RC does support Silverlight 3. So if you are working on an existing Silverlight 3 project, you should be fine. Let's see. Bob Blair asked the question, when can we expect a go live for Silverlight 4? The plan is we're not actually going to have a separate go live license for Silverlight 4 since it's a web runtime license. But you will find that the final release of Silverlight 4 is not too far away, and so once that ships, then we'll basically support go live with that. Let's see. Keith Richardson asked a question. I understand the planned launch for VS 2010 is April 12th. Do you expect the RTW, RTM before that? If so, how soon before it? We are certainly targeting to try to have the final release of Silverlight, or Visual Studio 2010 done by the launch event. But at the end of the day, we're driven by quality, and so if people tell us we're not ready, we won't be ready. But we're certainly trying very, 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 very hard to be ready. I don't think we are targeting a date to try to ship before then. I'm not sure whether the bits will be available before then or not, mainly because once we actually do what's called release to manufacturing, we actually hand off the disk to a production company which makes the DVDs and the boxes and things like that. And then it actually does take about 7 days to prop the bits from our servers onto MSDN for download. And the main reason for that is there's just a lot of gigabytes of bits, and it takes a while to deploy to all the servers, since a lot of people will download it on the first day. I'm not sure whether the bits will be available before April 12th, but we certainly are trying to target it so that they are available on April 12th. Again, ultimately, we're watching really closely with the release candidate this week, trying to figure out, are people happy? Are they running into issues? What are those last bugs? And part of the reason why I'm asking people to send me email whenever they find a bug is so that we can turn it around and make sure we understand it as soon as possible, so that we can make sure we stay on target. So that was that question. Charles asked a question: does the VS 2010 release candidate include the WPF ribbon control? There is a ribbon control for WPF4. It's actually not included in the .NET Framework. It's actually a separate download that you can download, I believe, from the CodeFlex site. I'm not sure whether it's been updated for the release candidate or not. Send me an email. I can double check on that, though. If it hasn't been yet, it will be released very, very shortly and be available as part of that. Rob asked a question: will Silverlight 3 plus WCF RIA services be supported in the VS 2010 release? Silverlight 3 will definitely be supported in the VS 2010 release, and then as soon as Silverlight 4 ships, Silverlight 4 will also be supported in the VS 2010 release. And Visual Studio 2010 will also support the WCF RIA technologies that will ship as part of Silverlight 4. The WCF RIA technologies will require Silverlight 4. It uses some of the new data binding capabilities in Silverlight 4 on the proxy generation. But we expect very quickly, once Silverlight 4 ships, we'll turn on the auto upgrade flag. And so, we expect most users to be on Silverlight 4 realistically within about 4 weeks from the point we ship. So to answer your question, you will be able to use both Silverlight 3 with the VS 2010 and a combination of Silverlight 4 and WCF RIA services with 2010 as well. Let's see, other questions. Ryan Clemens said, can Visual Studio come with a dark theme template? And will it be like 2008 where you can change the background colors of everything? It turns out, Ryan, we actually rebuilt the VS 2010 UI using WPF. And so you can actually stylize everything. There is actually a XAML file you can customize. And so you can change the colors, the styles, the fonts, the sizes. You could probably even make the text editor a circle instead of a square if you wanted to. I'm not sure why you would. But so yeah, you can completely customize that entirely. Josh Kaufman asked a quick question: am I coming back to Phoenix this year? For people who don't know, I've kind of done an annual, Scott Cade organizes this for me, an annual trip to Phoenix where I come and talk, usually in the May-June time frame. And the good news is I am coming back again to Phoenix. I think it's either going to be May 11th or May 18th are the two dates that we're looking at. Scott Cade's actually organizing everything. He's great at that. I think those are the two dates he's looking into, and we're just trying to get rooms set up. So yeah, I will come back to Phoenix, and obviously it'll be a totally free event. Let's see. Other questions? Go back to some of the beginning ones here so that people that asked at the very beginning get their questions answered. Jim asked the question: I'm wondering about the path and time frame for Silverlight to be a dev environment for mobile web browsers. You're going to hear a lot more about mobile with Silverlight really quickly, pretty soon. If you're interested in that topic, I would recommend thinking about coming to Mix, which is our big event in March, or tuning in and watching. You can watch all the events live for the event as well, and stream it, and you'll hear a lot more next month about our mobile plans, and I'm pretty excited about them. And I think we'll have some pretty cool stuff to show. So in terms of the time frame is not too far off. Bill asked a question: for small development shops running VS 2018 Suite and TFS on a 64-bit computer, but having to run a 32-bit operating system to support TFS 2008. Is there a quick migration using the same hardware? In other words, can you back up TFS 2008, flatten the 32-bit system, and build it up as a 64-bit TFS 2010 and restore the backup? I believe the answer is yes. If you send me email, I can definitely find out for sure for you. Certainly you can. So TFS 2010 does support 64-bit, and I know that you can also upgrade from TFS 2008 to TFS 2010. I believe you can do that in an automated backup way. Shoot me mail, and I can hook you up with Brian Harry, who runs that team, and he can let you know for sure. But I believe the answer is yes. Ryan Brook asked a question about IntelliSense and color coding for classic ASP VB script. His portions of the application are still written in classic ASP. Currently have to load 2 environments to work with the application. I'd heard that VB script support was coming back to VS 2008 in a service pack. Any word on whether that might happen and if there's VB script support in 2010? I thought we added it back to VS 2008 SP1. So I believe that's available. Shoot me mail if it's not, but I'm pretty sure the IntelliSense and support for classic ASP is back with VS 2008 SP1. So again, send me mail if that isn't the case. I'd be happy to follow up on that, but I believe it's there in SP1. David Pendra asked the question, has Microsoft made any interesting contributions back into jQuery? We are in the process right now of working with the jQuery core team about some pretty interesting contributions that we've offered to contribute back. And so we're actually looking at a few of those right now. And obviously it's up to John Resig and the jQuery core team on that front. But yeah, that is something we're hoping to be able to contribute some nice things to, and I don't want to speak too soon, but I think things are looking good there. Obviously, then also the other thing that we do contribute today, primarily on the core side, is around the IntelliSense documentation for jQuery. My team builds that and then contributes it back to the jQuery site, and then obviously we distribute it. So we are looking to be able to make more code contributions to the core jQuery in the future as well. So hopefully some good things happening there. Let's see. Keith Reichert asked a question. VS 2010 and .NET 4 now have charting controls available for ASP.NET and WinForms. What are the plans for charting controls in WPF and Silverlight? We do actually have some charting controls for Silverlight right now. That's in the Silverlight control toolkit that you can take advantage of. They don't have all of the features that the ASP.NET and Windows Forms controls have, but we're working hard on that. And you're going to see for both WPF and Silverlight in the future us build a pretty rich set of reporting controls and charting controls that anyone will be able to take advantage of. It is definitely something that we're focusing on and planning to enable. Looks like Jim asked a very similar question about the charting controls in Silverlight. You can use the charting controls that are in the Silverlight control toolkit today, or Silverlight toolkit today that I'd recommend looking at, and they'll get even richer in the future. We'll ask a question about, again, also about Silverlight for mobile. And so we don't have all the details to share right now, but do keep an eye out over the next month. You'll see a lot more details about our mobile plans. And I think hopefully you'll be pretty excited by what you see. I spend at least 50 or 60% of my time right now focused entirely on mobile. And so a large portion of my team has been as well the last year. And so hopefully we'll have some cool stuff to show off next month at Mix that will get everyone pretty excited. I'm excited about it. So let's see. So Chris A asked the question, with .NET 4, are WPF and Silverlight 4 data binding pretty much in sync? The answer is pretty much yes. I mean, what we've been trying to do with Silverlight has always been, make sure that whatever we put into Silverlight is compatible, and so that you can take advantage of skills reuse. The last couple of releases, then, we focused a lot on code reuse, and building up a lot of the Silverlight 4 features so that they have parity with some of the things in WPF 4. And so with Silverlight 3, we actually added a lot of things to make data binding richer. With Silverlight 4, we're kind of adding the next set of things. So some of the new things are things like notify property change support is in there. Allow DB, sort of the handling null is in there. String format is in there with Silverlight 4, and a bunch of other kind of capabilities kind of have gotten added as part of that release. I think collection views and sorting and paging and things like that. So it should be pretty much now, the big major data binding concepts now are there in Silverlight 4 that were in WPF. There's a few more advanced features that are still in WPF on the data binding side, but I think all the basics now are there and should enable some good code sharing across. Let's see. Lizette asked a question about, with ASP.NET MVC 2, what are the major changes on the MVC 2 version compared with the MVC 1 version? Are there any improvements to the sitemap provider or the plans to integrate MVC with MEF for pluggable sites? What way would we go if we want an extensive web portal with pluggable modules developed with the MVC framework? So we've got a bunch of questions in there. ASP.NET MVC 2 is a pretty major upgrade for MVC 1. It's completely compatible, so nothing breaks. And it builds on top of kind of all the skills that are in MVC 1 today. In terms of some of the big features, I'm doing a blog series on a number of them. Some of the big features are around the new strongly typed helpers. So there's a bunch of new helpers that are strongly typed. So you get IntelliSense and compile time checking support. Much improved validation. So there's now a built-in validation system. It's pluggable, but out of the box you get a nice, easy way to apply attributes to do validation, as well as to get client-side JavaScript support for validation as well automatically. We have new, what we call kind of editor 4 helpers, which can automatically do kind of scaffolding of forms as well as individual control inputs. We have new what's called areas support, so that you can segment your project so that you can kind of group controllers and regions together in a more easy way. We have async support, so that you can go off and do network access and not block worker threads, which is much more efficient. We have this thing called render action, which allows you to define a region of a page and have it be output by a separate controller and a separate action method from the rest of the page. And this is going back to your question about making kind of pluggable modules and kind of a portal-like framework. I think what you'd find is with areas, you can actually group your site in a more pluggable way. And then using render action, you can actually do things similar to kind of user controls today, and that you can have a page, or top-level controller that renders the frame of a page, and then for each of the sections, actually call out separate controllers in order to render that particular region. You're also going to see us come out with this project we call Orchard in the next couple of months in a lot more depth, which kind of provides a nice CMS blogging framework and provides a nice way that you can assemble sites using ASP.NET MVC 2. I think some of the scenarios you're talking about in terms of site navigation, kind of pluggable composition of UI, content management, blogging, extensibility, you'll find that Orchard kind of provides a nice out-of-the-box experience to enable that, and it's all built on MVC 2, so it, when you want to write code, it actually is just the same MVC 2 that you know today. We are looking then at richer MEF integration with MVC in the future. In general, our approach has been make sure with MVC everything's extensible. So, we can work with any dependency injection framework or any extensibility component framework today. But at the same time, be able to provide out-of-the-box features like validation. I think you'll see with MEF integration in the future, that also just allow you to take advantage of services in a pretty easy way without having to wire anything up. Let's see. Matthew asked, why does the slide show me in a shirt that is not red? Yeah, the red shirt thing is kind of funny. I don't know where exactly it started. I think it's mostly because I don't have a great wardrobe of colors. And now if I don't wear red, people are always asking me, what's up? I do actually wear shirts other than red occasionally. And so I think this shirt's actually from my official Microsoft corporate bio or something, and so that's why it's showing up in a non-red color. Let's see. Latash asked the question, will it hurt to migrate my existing MVC1 application to MVC2 to test? Hopefully it doesn't hurt. It should be relatively straightforward. We have steps in the release notes that walk you through how to actually do that migration today manually. With a final release of ES 2010, we'll also do an automatic upgrade. So if you want, you just click OK when you open the project, and it will automatically migrate you to MVC2, and you shouldn't have to change any code in order to do that. Elliot asked the question, I'm new to programming and want to be a Silverlight developer. Should I learn C# or F# or both? How important is F# going forward, and should I focus on F# alone? In general, I'd recommend if you're new to programming and you want to do Silverlight or ASP.NET, I'd recommend using either C# or VB, which are kind of the two primary languages. You'll find most samples are written in those languages. The tooling support's great, and they fit well for common application patterns. For people that don't know, F# is the new language that is coming in VS 2010 as an option. It does not replace VB or C#. It's a new, what's called functional language, and is really optimized around a couple scenarios. In particular, it's optimized for ones where you want to parallelize your execution. So in other words, you want to be able to run things across multiple cores or across multiple servers. And the functional aspects of the language make it a very nice language to do that type of parallel execution. It's also very good for scientific and engineering things, and it's very good for financial analysis or quantitative statistics and analysis type apps. So it's a very cool language. We have great support for it coming with VS 2010, but it's not something we expect most people to use. It's more for specific workloads that we think is particularly important. But what's nice is it is a .NET-based language, so you can use any .NET API with it. Prabir asked the question, will ASP.NET MVC2 be released under MSPL? Yes, we will ship MVC. All the source code for MVC2 will release under a license, open source license that anyone can use to modify or change things. Let's see. Andre asked, can I host Click Once in Azure? You should be able to host a Click Once app in Azure. If for some reason that isn't working, send me mail, and I will hook you up with someone on the Azure team to figure out why that isn't working. But you should absolutely be able to host a Click Once app pretty much on any server. Ashraf asked the question about Entity Framework 4. Reading blogs, forums, and none gave me any idea what features are included in EF4. Is self-tracking entities in this release? There's actually a bunch of features coming with Entity Framework 4, which is part of .NET 4. That actually is not my team. That's the data team built the Entity Framework. But there's a bunch of new capabilities and features coming with it. I've talked about them a little bit in some of my presentations. I haven't done a big blog post on it yet. Probably should at some point in the future. So I'll add that to the list. But in general, you'll find with EF4, a lot of the kind of pain points that people have complained about in the past have really been addressed. In particular, POCO support, what's called plain old CLR objects, is fully supported. Lazy loading is supported now by default. I believe the self-tracking identities is supported, so if you want to do entities that cross between WCF boundaries or between client and server, there's much richer support for that now. Automatic pluralization and singularization of tables from the database, so categories becomes a category object instead of a categories object. Products table becomes a product object, is now built in. Better support for exposing foreign keys if you want to, which is useful for stateless web scenarios. The ability to do what's called code only, so that you can define your mapping metadata using a Fluent style API, as opposed to having to have a mapping file. Sort of a bunch of pretty nice things that are coming. I'll try to blog about it in the future, and if you search on TDD Framework 4, you will find a bunch of content and articles, I believe, out there that you can take advantage of. Jason asked the question, does TFS 2010 have shell integration out of the box? I think what Jason, you're referring to is, can you, inside Visual Studio, check in and check out things with TFS directly without having to use the separate TFS tool that ships with TFS? The answer is yes. TS 2010 Professional has full TFS shell integration built in that you can take advantage of. So yeah, you can definitely integrate all of that within the Visual Studio IDE. I definitely that's the question. I can't hear anything. Unfortunately, me explaining how to hear things isn't going to work if you can't hear anything. I don't know if someone else, Zane or someone on the or Invar on the call, could actually follow up with him to help him get his audio working.
Yeah, we're on it, Scott.
Cool, thanks. Let's see. That said, NVC validation is a real pain. Can you suggest some pointers? If you go to my blog with MVC2, which sounds like you were using MVC1, but if you look back about 2 weeks, I did a blog post on the new ASP.NET MVC2 validation features, which should make validation really easy now for most scenarios. So send me mail if you have any problems with that. Andre asked, when will .NET 4 be available in Azure? It's a good question. We're working on that right now, and I don't have an exact date, but I do know we're working on that right now, and it's definitely something we're working hard to enable soon. So hopefully, relatively shortly from the point that .NET 4 ships, it will be available. Luke Puplet asked, Blend was the first WPF dog fooding product. Since building DS 2010 and learning, is Blend slated for a major overhaul in the not-too-distant future? There is going to be a new version of Blend that will be coming out in the future that takes advantage of all the new WPF 4 and Silverlight 4 features. I wouldn't necessarily call it a major overhaul, more just they're adding some really nice stuff, and you'll find it just even better than it is today. So you should hopefully see that come out in hopefully the not-too-distant future. Brian Madsen asked, hey, it seems the community thinks that ASP.NET MVC is going to kill ASP.NET Web Forms. Where do you see ASP.NET Web Forms in the future? I kind of did a blog post on this a couple of weeks ago, partly because a lot of people were saying that, and I wanted to make sure to clarify that that is definitely not happening. MVC doesn't kill web forms. Web forms doesn't kill MVC. Basically, the reason we created both web forms and MVC is we think there's a large number of developers out there that prefer each of those two different types of models. MVC is new, and so it is growing. There's a lot of excitement around it, but the reality is the vast majority, like 80 or 90% of all MVC or of ASP.NET developers today, still use web forms, and web forms is not going away. With ASP.NET 4 that's coming out this summer or the spring, we're doing major enhancements on the ASP.NET 4 side. things like better markup, the ability to control client IDs, more view state management, clean SEO for URL control and for URLs, new data controls, new validation features, new charting controls. To go on and on and on, but there's lots of improvements happening to web forms. It's definitely not going away. I had this blog post that sort of was also more about philosophically how people debate technology about 2 weeks ago that I recommend reading in terms of more there, but definitely not going away. And you'll continue to see big improvements to both web forms and MVC in the future, since there's a lot of people using both, and a lot of people that love both, and we love both ourselves. Let's see. Christoph asked, how about visiting us in Germany? Germany is actually on my list of countries I'm hoping to visit this year. It's actually been probably about 3 years since I've been to Germany. And so it's been maybe 2 years. Anyway, it's far too long anyway. So Germany is definitely on my list. Italy is also on my list of countries I'd like to go back to again soon. And so I'm trying to figure out my travel schedule right now. I do travel a lot, so it's unfortunately sometimes a little hard for me to get away. And my family kills me when I do. So, but I am actually hoping to be able to get to Germany in the not too distant future. Other people ask questions about, am I coming to Northern California anytime soon? I don't have a trip scheduled for Northern California just yet, but I'm sure sometime this year I'll be back visiting Northern California again. Let's see, let me go back and do some other ones here. Let's see. Ruslan asked, are you working with Moonlight to make Moonlight compatible with Silverlight 4? For people that don't know, Moonlight is an open source version of Silverlight that runs on Linux. It's sponsored by the Mono Project and by Novell. And we work very closely with them. We actually do deliver some bits of code to Moonlight. So my team actually delivers a lot of the media code that Moonlight uses, as well as the codecs for decoding video. And my team also delivers all the test cases that we use for Silverlight on ourselves. And so that allows Miguel and that team to basically run the same test cases and unit tests that we use against the Moonlight implementation as well. So we do partner very closely with those guys and are very supportive of their project. Roger asked, will WCF RIA with Silverlight 4 be supported on Azure? It will be supported in the future. It's not currently supported, but as soon as .NET 4 is there and WCF RIA shifts, we'll definitely make sure that you can support that in the future. Dan asked, I looked at the Nerd Dinner MVC2 and 4 of the dinner controller tests fail. Should be mail on that. I'm not aware of any tests that should be failing. We are looking to update the Nerd Dinner for MVC2 in the not too distant future. Actually, you might be, Dan, actually, there was a bug around that we fixed in the most recent MVC2 RC, now that I think about it, around empty string inputs, which didn't cause runtime failures, but might be the reason why the unit test wasn't working. I believe the latest public MVC2 RC should not have that problem, so let me know if you still have that problem, look into it. But we are looking to upgrade Nerd Dinner. I'm also working with John Galloway on a new storefront-based tutorial for MVC2 as well. So you'll see a lot more tutorials coming out as well on that as we get closer to the final release. Other questions. Bob Blair asked, has the extensibility model for creating add-ons of VS 2010 changed significantly from 2008 and previous versions of VS? Simple answer is yes. The new add-in and extensibility support in VS 2010 is much richer than any previous release. You can now plug in pretty much everywhere inside VS 2010, whether it's in the text editor, the shell, the build system, everywhere is pretty much extensible. We have spent a lot of time focusing on trying to maintain compatibility with existing add-ons and packages, though. And we work very closely with all the big vendors and open source projects that build packages and add-ons for VS. So, the goal is to make it easy to migrate, but you will find that there's a ton of new extensibility capabilities that you can take advantage of. Juan asked the question, how much SharePoint development support should we expect with VS 2010? You're going to find, for a lot of people that have already tried it out, you will find that there's a lot of rich support with VS 2010 for SharePoint. You can now create projects, open edit projects with SharePoint, code, get IntelliSense, debug, deploy to SharePoint, add new controls, data bind to lists and services. The feedback we've heard from SharePoint developers with VS 2010 has been really phenomenal. And so, yeah, we have a really great story with SharePoint VS 2010 in the future. Lizette asked, can we use ASP.NET MVC2 with the Express editions of VS 2010? Yes, you absolutely will be able to use MVC2 with the Express editions of VS 2010. You can also use MVC 1 and 2 with the Express editions of VS 2008 as well. So what you want to do is use the Visual Web Developer Express editions, and yeah, you'll be able to get full MVC2 support as part of that. Jim asked the question, will I be speaking at MIX? If not, what's the next major conference I'll be attending? I am actually speaking at MIX. I'm doing the keynote pretty much all day, day one. So I'm doing the big keynote kicking off the event, and it looks likely that I'm also going to be doing a keynote on day two as well, just because I guess people want to keep me busy. So yeah, you'll see a lot of me at MIX speaking. I then have a bunch of other conferences coming up in the near future. I'm speaking at the Dev Connections conference in April, I think it's April 12th or 13th, where we'll be launching VS 2010. I'm speaking in Phoenix in May, and it's likely that I'm doing a trip to Europe sometime in April or May, also doing a speaking tour there as well. And I'll be in Japan this summer and possibly hitting Australia and New Zealand as well a little bit later this year. Gerard asked the question, will the MIX be streamed live this year? Yep, we always stream MIX live, and so the keynote will be streamed live, and then I think all the breakout sessions will also be posting all the videos on the web as well. Let me go back to the beginning here. Nikita asked the question, whatever happened with Nokia supporting Silverlight? We are making good progress with Nokia. If you want to build a Nokia Silverlight app, shoot me mail, and we might be able to get you bits sooner rather than later, but the bits will be available for everyone to use shortly, and then you'll start seeing Silverlight included on new Nokia phones in the not-too-distant future. Let's see. Josh Schwartzberg asked, when are we going to have a more automated implementation of iNotify property change, or at least a non-string-based way of doing it, say using lambdas? It's a good question. It's a question that I know I've asked a lot, and I know we're looking hard at supporting something like that in the future. I was actually just talking with Anders Hausberg yesterday, I think, or the day before yesterday about that. He's starting to think about the next release of C# from a language feature perspective, and there were 2 or 3 features I put in his ear, one of which was that one. And so I know that's actually top of mind for him to think about and looking at. Mark DeRider asked the question, the IntelliSense output window in the RC uses the same font. However, it appears that they are not having the same font kerning looking different. You should be emailing that, Mark. I can follow up with the VS team and understand why the fonts look different on that. I'm not entirely sure why, but I can definitely follow up with you on that. Shaggy asked the question, will Silverlight Futures allow you to use the serial port in full trust mode? Good question. I think you might be able to, on PCs, with COM support, actually write the serial port when you're running in full trust mode. You probably, if there's a library out there, and there probably is one built into Windows, then you can do that. I don't think Macs actually have serial ports, so I don't think you can do that on a Mac. But on Windows, I believe you can if you take advantage of the new COM support in full trust. Leon asked a question. I'm new to the whole .NET world. Skills are growing, and I should spend time using MVC and Silverlight 4, or should I stick with web forms? Good question. I mean, the thing I always tell people, and I kind of did this blog post about it two weeks ago. Well, first thing that I would say is you can absolutely stick with web forms. We're making lots of improvements to web forms. Web forms is not going away, so that's important to say up front. In terms of kind of when you learn something new versus not, the thing I always recommend to people is, try to spend some portion of your time, and it's typically not more than about a few percentage points, of just kind of understanding what's coming out and what the role of different things are. That doesn't mean you have to learn the APIs. It doesn't mean you even have to build something with it. But feel comfortable knowing, what is Silverlight? What is WPF? What is MVC? To the point that you at least know what it is. Not necessarily that you can actually build something in it, not that you have to buy a book about it, but just kind of know what its role is, and should you ever want to learn about it in the future. And then, be pragmatic about what you decide to invest your time in. And, if there's a project or a scenario where like, hey, I want to do something with video, or I want to do something where I'm building a very rich Forms app that runs inside the browser, or I want to do something with graphics, then something like Silverlight makes total sense. Likewise, if you want to incorporate, unit testing more into your app, or you like the way, you're frustrated with, say, the control model in web forms, then, starting and using MVC makes total sense. But, being kind of pragmatic and knowing why you're going to use something new, and not feeling you always have to keep learning and mastering new things, is a good way to avoid feeling overwhelmed about new technology. And then, stay current enough that you know enough about different things that you understand kind of the landscape and how it fits. And then you can adapt the skills that you have pretty much to any development API or new technology pretty easily, as long as you don't let yourself get overwhelmed by it. Mikhail asked a question about font rendering in WPF and Silverlight 4 and whether there's any improvements. Yes, there is. WPF 4 now uses the new direct write text system, and so you should see kind of much improved font rendering support in WPF. Silverlight 4 does not use direct write yet. That's something we're looking at for the future. But Silverlight 4 does also improve. It does also include a bunch of font rendering and text improvements as well. Minhaj asked the question, does Silverlight 4 support for COM-raised security questions, and does it somehow violate cross-browser mantra? Was it requested heavily by the enterprise community? Yeah, Silverlight 4 does support this model that we call elevated apps. Yeah, elevated apps, which is basically when you're running outside the browser and you basically have an application running on the desktop. You can do more. The user can optionally allow the app to do more than it used to be able to do purely in the sandbox. And that works both on the Mac and on Windows. Because it runs outside the browser, it isn't really a cross-browser thing. It's more of an operating system integration thing. And again, it works with both Windows and the Mac. On Windows, the one feature it does have the Mac doesn't have is COM support, so that you can activate and use COM objects. And the reason it doesn't work on the Mac is there isn't COM object support on the Mac, and so we couldn't add that feature. we are looking in the future of, like, do we enable Apple script support, though, on the Mac, since there's similar things that people sometimes want to be able to do there. In terms of the people that asked for the COM support, it turns out a ton of people have asked for it. The enterprise community asked for it a lot, but to be honest with you, a lot of it, we found a lot of Adobe Air developers also really asked for it. It was kind of one of their top gripes with Air today. It was like, hey, I'd like to be able to do this or integrate with Office. So we think there's a variety of both enterprise and consumer scenarios. So that's actually kind of interesting to think about. ASCII asked the question, why are some Silverlight 4 features available only outside the browser? For example, web browser mode. This is a question a lot of people do ask me. The main reason for that is mainly around security. And so, people have asked, like, hey, it'd be great if you could print without having to have a confirmation dialogue. The downside is that means that if you went to any website, they could, choose to print out a whole bunch of stuff to your printer if we didn't prompt users to print before we printed. Likewise, if we did full screen mode and allowed every keyboard, they could display what looked like a security prompt with a login form, cause you to enter your username and password and steal your password. So there's certain things we need to do from a security perspective to make sure that we keep machines safe. The web browser control is a tough one in that you can do a heck of a lot with it, including a lot of spoofing attacks. And both IE, Firefox, Chrome, and Safari have all had exploits like that recently. And so we're just being careful with Silverlight running inside the browser not to open up those types of attacks, which is why that's not available today. If we can find out a way to make it 100% safe, then we will do that. Paulie asked a question, has any of the WCF starter kit bits made it into VS 2010 or .NET 4? I believe there is actually a VS Visual Studio 2010 training kit or getting started kit that just came out in the last day or two. And I believe that does have WCF content included as part of that.
Scott, this is Zane real quick. Traditionally, that kit does have quite a bit of good WCF content. So.
Cool. Great. Bill Walter asked a question, when you install TFS 2008, 2018 system, there's an option to send Microsoft the installation experience. It's a real pain to install TFS 2008. What are we doing to make the installation of TFS a lot easier? The good news is with TFS 2010, we have made installing TFS a lot easier. That is definitely feedback that we took to heart and heard from a lot of people, was it just took too long, it was too many steps with TFS 2008. TFS 2010 includes what's called a basic setup mode, where literally you can get source control, work item tracking, automated builds up and running on a completely clean machine in less than 20 minutes. And I actually did that without ever having installed TFS before in my life, recently on a trip at a conference that I spoke at. So it's a lot easier than it ever was before. You can also now install it on both servers as well as on client operating systems. So if you just want to have a TFS running locally on your local Windows 7 box, you can do that as well. So that is something we're really trying to focus a lot on and make it a lot easier. Ryan asked, I answered earlier about the theming support inside VS 2010 allows you to customize everything. Is there a way to ship a dark theme out of the box? Fortunately, we won't have a dark theme out of the box. Something I actually asked for, because I actually like the dark theme. But I guess people didn't listen to me on that one. But I think you will see, like with Power Tools and as other downloads, you'll be able to get a dark theme pretty easily set up with VS 2010. Steve asked about a project called Courier that a few websites have reported about. Fortunately, I can't say anything about that. But yeah. Anyway, but thanks for asking. Let's see, Raj's question. We have web deployment projects, and the new web deployment tool is WDP no longer actively being developed. There is this project type we have called the web deployment projects that we supported with 2005 and 2008. It's not currently, well, what we did with 2010 was, and basically, let me step back. What we did with 2005 and 2008 was we had these separate project types that allowed you to kind of automate deployment to servers. And so you could like change connection string settings was probably the most common thing people did, run kind of custom tasks as part of the build, and then you could typically pipe it into like a setup project or just copy it somewhere and deploy it. What we did with 2010 is we kind of actually built in deployment into the web projects itself, so that you no longer need a separate project inside your Solution Explorer, and instead you can do deployment directly as part of that. So if you go to 2010, you can right-click and say deploy, and you can also pull up the properties, and there's now deployment tabs in the project properties for any web project that allows you to customize that. And so in general, what I do is I would recommend actually going towards that model for deploying your web apps in the future. It's a lot richer. There's a lot more options, much richer support. We are, though, looking at, and we'll probably provide in the next 2 or 3 weeks more guidance on, for people that already do have web deployment projects with 2005 and 2008, both how can you migrate to the new deployment system that's built in, and then we're also looking at do we do another the web deployment project type, just so that if you want to keep your settings exactly the same, it'll just work with 2010. So hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks, you'll see more guidance on that in terms of how best to handle that. Brandon Kelly asked the question, will VIA 2010 have designer support for the SQL Server reporting services 2008? It's a good question. If you send me mail, I'll find out for sure what the plan is there. Someone else sent me a mail about that yesterday or the day before, and I've been meaning to follow up on it, so I will follow up on that and find out for you. Reggie asked the question, why can't I use the package def file to register my DDEX component? I'm going to confess I don't know what the package def file is, and I don't actually even know what a DDEX component is. But if you send me mail, I can find out for sure. I think that has to do with VS extensibility. I know the person to loop you in with who can answer for sure. Chico.net asked that I'm using another pattern, NVVM and MVP. NVVM stands for Model View View Model, for people that don't know on the call, and is a pattern that's pretty popular with client applications, in particular with WPF and Silverlight. And it's kind of like a Model View Controller pattern, slightly different, but it's the same concept of being able to separate out kind of your view from what's called a view model and from your controller logic. And from your model objects. And it basically enables richer unit testing and code composition. And MVP, the Model View Presenter pattern, is another kind of derivation of separation of concerns that you can use. It's quite popular with both Windows Forms as well as with web forms in ASP.NET. All these patterns are good. I think they're all good, and if they help you unit test better, that's great. Definitely feel free to use those. I would probably, if you're doing WinForms or web forms in one unit testing, I would look hard at the MVP pattern. If you're using Silverlight WPF, I probably encourage people more towards the Model View View Model pattern. With both Silverlight and with Silverlight 4, for example, we're adding commanding support, which integrates better with Model View View Model, and you'll see both our VS and our blend tools in the future be able to support Model View View Model better with both WPF and Silverlight from a tooling experience as well. Ron asked about RDLCs in the NDC framework. Believe that is planned in the future. I think you can probably use it today with the reporting control, though I'm not 100% sure. If you send me mail, I can loop you in with some folks and definitely find out for sure. Chad asked questions about, are there Silverlight changes in the next drops? In particular, he's looking for a data contract resolver and a net data contract serializer support. There are definitely a lot of improvements coming with the next Silverlight 4 drop, mostly on the order of kind of nice small features that people have asked for. and obviously some tooling improvements. If you send me an email, I can find out for sure. I'm not sure on the serializer front if we're adding those 2 classes you're asking for or not. If you send me an email, I can find out what the plan is and make sure the team sees that feedback. Michael asked a question about the new RTM releases of RIA services in EF4. Will there be better support for updating the EDMX and domain services? With the current tooling, he finds it painful to do. It's a good question. I know that there's definitely tooling improvements coming with both EF4 and WCF RIA services. I actually saw a demo of some stuff earlier this week. I didn't see the update scenario earlier this week, but I did see the generation, and it looked much cleaner. So hopefully you'll find that the tooling continues to get better there. Someone asked about regarding a model view model. Is there going to be an official model view model framework for Silverlight coming from Microsoft? There won't in the short term. It's something I've actually asked a number of people whether we should do. What we focus on mostly right now is kind of the core model view model infrastructure level for both WPF and Silverlight, kind of providing the hooks that enables everyone to build their own MVVM patterns on top. I think you will see more prescriptive guidance or more of a sort of out-of-the-box solution that works as well in the future as well. Andre asked, what framework in C# can I use to read barcode images? If you search on barcode image reader C#, you should find a couple of hits. We posted the Silverlight 4 demo I did at PDC last fall, where I showed off a barcode reader. All the code to do both the webcam integration as well as the barcode reading logic, you can download from the Silverlight website to see that app in action on your own machine. Colin Blair asked, Jeff Hanley's trying to get the source release for WCF RIA services. Is there anything the community can do to help? Good question. Encourage Jeff to send me email. I'd be happy to help. Kendai asked a question, any work done in .NET 4 on optimizing the AJAX script that gets downloaded on the client machine? We have done actually a bunch of work around optimizing script downloads with ASP.NET 4 in our new AJAX release. So definitely that is something we spent a lot of time on. If you look at my .NET 4 series of blog posts and with actually a post I did probably in October or early November about something we call the AJAX Content Delivery Network, or CDN, on my blog. We're also, with the new script manager control that's coming with ASP.NET 4, building in automatic CDN support for a script manager. And the way a CDN works is it's basically, think of it as servers that are positioned all over the world that enable caching of content much closer to the browser that's actually requesting the content. It's really useful for video and for JavaScript files and for images, because it means that if someone in, say, Germany is accessing a server that's here in Seattle, instead of having to download the images from Seattle, there's a cache server that will automatically probably be there in Germany, and he'll download the resources from that. And so it's much faster in terms of load time for performance. We're going to put all of our AJAX, we put all of our AJAX scripts as well as jQuery into the Microsoft AJAX CDN. It's free to use, and you can reference those scripts either explicitly, or you can use the ASP script manager control and it will automatically pull it from it. And I have a blog post again about that in the November time frame that you can look at. Lohit asked the question, how do I find time to do blogging? Sometimes it's really hard, I'll say. Usually I do most of my blogging late at night after the family's gone to bed. And it is pretty time consuming. I wish I had a magic answer on how to make it easy and not take a lot of time. Yeah, usually my wife goes to bed around 10:30, and so I usually write most of my blog posts between around 10:30 and 2 or 3 a.m. So yeah, so unfortunately I don't have any magic bullet in terms of kind of how to make it easy to write blog posts, but sometimes it just takes work. see. Hassan asked, will Expression Studio 4 and VS 2010 and Silverlight 4 ship around the same time frame? We haven't announced Expression Studio 4 yet. That's something we'll obviously be talking about in the future, though, and so we will have Expression Studio 4. We do plan on shipping both VS 2010 and Silverlight 4 roughly in the same time frame, so we do expect them kind of all to ship roughly in the same time frame. Silverlight 4 is a separate release. It does include tooling support for VS 2010, but it will ship as a slightly separate release. Let's see. Ashraf has a question about VS 2010 Beta 2. The mouse wheel does zoom in and zoom out. He thinks the mouse wheel works better for scroll up, scroll down. Actually, I believe with VS 2010, mouse wheel does do scroll up, scroll down. If you hold the control key down, then mouse wheel does zoom in, zoom out. But I believe the mouse wheel, like 2008, just still does scroll up, scroll down. Definitely does that in the RC, and I'm pretty sure it does that in Beta 2 as well. I think Beta 1 was where it did zoom in, zoom out. So we've since changed that. Ashraf also asked a question with MVC2. We support a built-in data annotation validation framework. And the question was around, how do you do business rule validation? Our data annotation support can be used with both to both validate individual properties. It also supports model-level validation, so you can actually add an attribute at the class level and do a validation of multiple properties. If you want to do kind of even richer validation, where you say like business rule validation that's based on, say, the state of the object or something like that, you can plug in other validation frameworks, things like Castle Validator, Entity Library Validator, or your own validator. And so any of those can be pretty easily plugged into MVC2 and that whole system. Someone asked the question, have I done any work on Windows Mobile 7? Yep, I have been working on Windows Mobile 7. I can't talk about what I've done, but I have been pretty deeply involved in that project last year. So yeah, I'll be talking more about what I've been working on there in the future, not too distant future. Revere asked the question, can we have MVC style validation in classical ASP.NET web forms-based applications? Yes, you can. And in fact, with the new ASP.NET 4 release that's coming out, we actually have a cool helper library or helper method that you call on any data-bound control like a data grid or grid view or form view, which will actually cause those to automatically use the data annotations just like MVC and provide validation support for web forms-based controls. So absolutely, that's a cool feature I need to blog about. Ray asked, can legacy WinForms controls be used in Silverlight? Unfortunately, no. WinForms controls basically need to be hosted within an HWind window, and since Silverlight's cross-platform, we don't expose one of those. You can, however, use WinForms controls within WPF applications today, and so you can host those WinForms controls inside WPF apps. Elliot asked, currently reading beginning C#3. Do you think I should learn C#3, or should I just wait for books on 4 since it will be released in 3 months or so? If you're already reading a book on beginning C#3, definitely recommend keep reading it. I'd say C#3 had a bunch of new language features, things like link, object initializers, the var keyword, and more. C#4 has a bunch of nice new features as well. But in general, they're all complementary and just kind of add on to what was in C#3. So I definitely keep recommending learning the C#3 book, and then you can just learn about all the stuff that's coming in C#4. Art Katan asked a question: what accomplishment am I proudest of in 2009? I don't know. In 2009 or 2010? I think in 2009, some of the stuff that I feel good about that people are just starting to start using now is things like the web platform installer, a bunch of things that we've done on the server side to make deploying apps and getting kind of our web server in really good shape. And we're starting to see month over month now in 2010, more and more people are downloading some of these cool extensions that are out there for our web server. So that's kind of one of the things that most people don't see. Obviously, Phil's good about Silverlight 3 and getting Silverlight 4 to beta, getting MVC 1 shipped, a bunch of stuff. And I'd say in the next couple months, I feel really good that the combination of .NET 4, VS 2010, ASP.NET MVC 2, Silverlight 4, some of the mobile stuff that we're doing, there's a ton of stuff that's all going to be coming out pretty quickly, and I feel pretty good about that feature set. It's been a busy last 12 months, but hopefully should be exciting times ahead. Jason asked about thoughts on building .NET apps for iPhone. There is actually a pretty good way to build apps for the iPhone using .NET today. It's called MonoTouch. So if you search the web on MonoTouch, you can go ahead, and I think there's a trial edition that you can download. And it's a tool that's built by Novell that uses Mono for building iPhone apps. And what's nice about it is you can use just C# and standard .NET APIs. And then what they've done is they actually have a nice .NET API for programming iPhone UI. And they support Interface Builder on the Mac. So it's a nice way if you want to do iPhone development using .NET. There's a lot of people raving about it. Sean Hubbard asked a question, what were the major feature differences between ASP.NET 4 and ASP.NET MVC 2? It's a good question. From a naming perspective, it's a little confusing. So ASP.NET 4 is a bunch of things, a bunch of improvements to the core of ASP.NET, and then I think of it as including both MVC2 as well as ASP.NET 4 web forms. So I'm not sure if your question is about the differences between web forms and MVC, or around, it's a bit of apples to oranges if you compare ASP.NET 4 to MVC2, because they're kind of actually, in some ways, build on the same thing, and one builds on top of the other. Dennis asked a question about SharePoint tools in VS 2010. Can you use it to program against SharePoint 2007? Unfortunately, it does not. I think the SharePoint tools in VS 2010 only work with the SharePoint 2010 that's about to come out. Shane asked about the Express editions. Will they support smart device development? Right now, none of the VS 2010 editions that are out there support mobile. As soon as we talk about our mobile strategy and plans in the weeks ahead, then you'll actually start to see the mobile tools appear for VS 2010. And I think you'll be happy with what you see in terms of the capability that we're coming out with. James asked the question, can we expect better ways to create MVC views, such as easier ways to avoid spaghetti code? I think there's maybe a couple answers or questions in there. One is, are there better ways to create MVC views that we're coming out with? The answer is yes. We are looking hard at, how do we make it even easier and cleaner to write MVC views? You'll see a couple blog posts from me as part of my MVC2 series about new features like, one I've already done is around the strongly typed helpers. I'm also going to do a post on Editor 4 in the not-too-distant future, which allows you to create kind of forms in a much cleaner way, in a lot more componentized way. We're also then adding support with the final MVC release so that when you do add view, you can now optionally add T4 templates to use the Spark view engine if you want to, as a syntax option. And then we're also looking for, not for MVC2, but for MVC3, kind of alternative view engines that we might also support, which provide kind of a nice, clean syntax for generating view markup. What we find is different people have different kind of opinions as to what the best way is to do kind of view generation. And so, you're going to see us kind of future. In terms of, someone asked about the Mix website. Am I on the list of people that are speaking? It looks like I'm not on the list for some reason.
Scott, I know your picture's on there.
Oh, was my picture on there? Oh, okay.
Yep.
Cool. Oh, there, yeah, okay, yeah. So if you go to the website, live.visitmix.com/about, I guess I'm the guy in the red shirt that pops up on the second picture. I think Bill Buxton must look more attractive, so they put him first. Yeah, I'm definitely speaking at Mix. I think I have about like 2 hours of keynote content that I'm delivering, and it might kill me to get all that content created, but I'll definitely be there speaking a lot. Brenton Unger asked, what about support for parallel programming with Silverlight in the future? It's a good question. I think we support F# with Silverlight today. I don't believe we support the parallel extensions yet, but we do support multi-threading with Silverlight 4, and so you can definitely take it out there. Rick said, I mentioned there's going to be lots of end-to-end tutorials with all the new stuff coming out. Any idea when? We're working on the end-to-end tutorials now. Joe Stagner is working on the end-to-end web forms tutorial for ASP.NET 4. John Galloway is working on an end-to-end MVC2 tutorial. I know some of the folks on the Silverlight side are working on end-to-end Silverlight 4 tutorial. So that's definitely something I'm kind of trying to push those guys to work on. I'm giving kind of feedback on that. So hopefully you'll see a lot more of those coming out, kind of hopefully in the weeks and months ahead. The launch of a lot of these things is, of VS 2010 and .NET 4 is kind of mid-April. So I'm hoping to have a new ASP.NET website updated by then with a bunch of new tutorials updated by then as well that are all ready for it. Matthew asked, now that we've announced the official ship dates of VS 2010 and SQL 2008 R2, can I clarify about some of the wave technologies such as the SQL Server modeling services and reactive framework? When are those shipping? Good question. To be honest, I don't know exactly what the SQL Server modeling timeframe and reactive framework timeframes are. Those are actually delivered by the SQL team, and so I don't off the top of my head know the dates that they're currently projecting for those when that's coming out. So unfortunately, I don't know, but if you shoot me mail, I can try to find out. Steve Gann asked, can I do a blog post for the people just stepping into the .NET Ocean? Where's the start line? One of the things you're going to see, hopefully in the next 4 weeks, is a pretty major update to the www.asp.net website. None of the content is going away, but it is. We are kind of redesigning it specifically so that if you're brand new to .NET and ASP.NET, it's super easy to get started, and we kind of take your hand and guide you through, everything necessary to be successful. How to download the bit, how to find a hoster, end-to-end tutorials on kind of getting started, and have content specifically focused for folks that don't know VS and .NET today. So I'll do a blog post once that's live and point you at it, but that is definitely something we're focusing on and investing in. Lizette asked a question, are there any problems reported with having .NET 4 sitting side by side with 3.5? Any gotchas to be aware of on an IIS server? No, I'm not aware of any. Send me if you have any. But basically, we do a lot of testing in that scenario, and basically we support having them both on the same server side by side, and you can go into the admin tool and choose for each app pool or for each site or application which version that they targeted to take advantage of. Cornelius Kruger asked a question about Silverlight on other mobile devices like mobile phone, iPhone, and Android. I mentioned a little bit earlier at the beginning of the call, you might not have been on. You'll hear a lot more about Silverlight on mobile in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully some pretty exciting announcements coming out there. Todd asked, a question about monotouch, which I was mentioning a little bit earlier. Can we have Silverlight show up on the iPhone? That's something we'd like to. Obviously we're looking into that and seeing what we could do. Paul asked a question about Apple's recent anti-flash approach. Will Silverlight be able to run on the iPad, the iPhone? Yeah, there's been a lot of interesting controversy there. We have actually with Silverlight worked to enable with the new IS Media Services 4 that's coming out support so that you can stream Silverlight content to the iPhone and so that is something that we're focusing on and going to be officially supporting. And basically we can program to the video tag that the iPhone supports as well as to their video API. So that'll just work out of the box. In terms of enabling Silverlight to run inside Safari on the browser on those devices, that's something that we're interested in being able to do. Ultimately, that's something that Apple controls, though, and we're going to be working closely with them on that as part of that discussion. But ultimately, that's their decision, not ours. Shag asked a question: Will more big-name sites be using Silverlight ads instead of Flash? Actually, a lot of the Bing sites are now, and MSN sites are now using Silverlight, not just for video and for apps, but increasingly now for ads as well. We're seeing some really good results. There's been some good articles in the last 2 weeks from a lot of ad agencies where they're seeing much higher returns on click rates and follow-throughs on some nice immersive Silverlight ads that have been in the market. Nick Craver asked a question: Is there any more IS7 feature support going into Cassini in 2010? Or, I think specifically what he'd like to be able to use is IS7 to debug the web apps just like Cassini does today. You won't see that with the initial 2010 CS release, but you're going to see more details about that coming out in the not-too-distant future. That's definitely something we're looking to enable, and hopefully it will just light up and work with VS 2010 in the future once we ship it. Scott asked the question: Will there be an express version of TFS? What we're doing with TFS is we're actually shipping TFS as a free component of all MSDN subscriptions. So if you're an MSDN professional subscription or premium subscription or enterprise subscription, you will get a free version of TFS, both of the server as well as the CAL to go against it. We don't right now have plans to make a free version of TFS for Express editions or for non-MSDN subscribers, but we will have a version of TFS that's very inexpensive to buy, so that you can actually buy that if you're a non-MSDN subscriber, and the price point will be about the same as Visual Source Safe that you'll be able to use on there. Bill Walter asked a question about Zune development and integration with the Zune marketplace. We don't support that today, but I think you'll see a lot more announcements around mobile-related stuff in the weeks ahead. And so I think you'll see some stuff that looks interesting soon. Brian Madsen asked a non-technical question: What car do you drive, and what car would be your dream car? For about the first 12 or 14 years of my Microsoft experience, I actually drove like a 95 Dodge Stratus before it kind of literally started falling apart on me. And I actually recently bought a Infiniti, and we also have at home a Honda, what do you call it, minivan, whatever the minivan that Honda does. So what's my dream car? I really like my Infiniti, so I'm happy with my car right now. Hopefully it'll last another 12 years. In the case of a client having IS7, response.in doesn't work as expected. Not exactly sure what the issue running into. If you send me an email on that, I can find out for you and follow up. Bob Titler asked a question about, will there be updates to the Prism library to support VS 2010? Yes, that is something we'll definitely be supporting in the future, and so expect to see updates there. Ryan asked a question about commanding and mouse left button up, down. Good question. I'm not 100% sure, Ryan, but if you send me email on that, I can follow up on that and find out what's up with that. Radko asked a question about TDD Framework and T4 templates for POCO. They should show up. If they're not already out there, they should be showing up any day now. I think Julie Lerman actually has a blog post about that, how you can use the beta 2 ones already. But they'll show up in the gallery, and you'll be able to take advantage of that, hopefully immediately. Chris A. asked about the training kit that we mentioned earlier. If you search for, I think, DS 2010 training kit, and I'll try to dig up in Twitter a link to it. I believe, I haven't actually downloaded it myself, but I saw someone Twitter about it in the last day or two, so I think it's now out that you can download. Brian asked a question about streaming support. Are we looking to kind of have a Silverlight IS smooth streaming service or something related to Azure? It is something we're thinking about. There is now a EC2 role that you can use for media services with EC2 that you can take advantage of. That is available now, but it is something that we're looking at in the future. Terry asked a question about releasing the source code to the Silverlight Facebook client app. We've released the app. It's actually a different team than mine that built the app itself, and so I am currently negotiating with them to try to get the source code released as well. But the app itself, you can go ahead and download it. Dan asked a question about Google creating a replacement for the HTTP protocol. I haven't actually seen that announcement. I think what they're doing is actually tunneling something on top of the HTTP protocol, but I'm not 100% sure what they're doing there, so I'll need to follow up and look at that. I'm not aware of any plans that we have to replace HTTP. HTTP is kind of the backbone of the web, so it'll be pretty hard to replace that.
Yes, I think the IETF would have something to say about that.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, probably a lot of people would. David, you already asked a question about MVVM and kind of improving some project templates for that. I think you will see us do a lot more project templates and support for MVVM in the future. And I think you'll see much more richer VS as well as expression support for MVVM in the future as well. Brandon Kelly asked a question about significant changes to T4 support in VS 2010. Probably the biggest change is much richer support for T4 templates across multiple project types coming out now with VS 2010. And so you will see a lot more support with that.
Scott, I'm gonna break in now. We're running kind of short on time. It's your call if you want us to go ahead and we can start wrapping up.
Unfortunately, I think I might need to wrap up because it turns out there's a whole group that's come to see me that's standing outside the door looking at me right now. Unfortunately, I'm going to probably need to start wrapping that up now.
Okay. We'll take it over.
I'll definitely do another one of these events probably in the next 2 or 3 months. We kind of do it usually every 2 months. So hopefully we'll get one scheduled again shortly. So sorry I have to cut it off now, but hopefully been able to answer a bunch of questions here. I think for people that joined late, I think what we'll do is we'll be actually posting the audio of the talk online. So if you want to, you can also download it and listen to it offline as well.
We sure will. Thank you, Scott. We always enjoy having you on the LinkedIn.net user group.
Cool. Thanks so much for having me, and hope this was useful. And enjoy VS 2010, .NET 4, Silverlight, ASP.NET, all that good stuff. So thanks a bunch.
All right. Thanks a lot. All right, boys and girls, we're going to start wrapping up. We love Scott as always. He totally rocks. Just a reminder, I'll get to the reminder in a bit. This is Zane Nabulsi real quick. I'm going to let Brian wrap up. But before we do that, I just want to remind folks, if you haven't heard yet, I am now taking over the tips and tricks from Sarah Ford. She's a good friend of mine. And if you're interested in Visual Studio tips and tricks, you can check out my blog at blog.msdn.com/ZaneNab, Z-A-I-N-N-A-B. There it is. Should be popping up on most people's screens at this point. Great time to check out what's going on. Lots of good stuff that we're talking about today, in fact, in there, and we'd love to have you. Thinking about a book as well. Not quite sure where we're going to go with that, but we'll see where it goes. And at that point, I am going to turn this lovely thing over to my buddy Brian. Let him close things out.
Thanks for that, Shane. Yeah, and thank you for everybody for showing up today. Scott Guthrie, as usual, I mean, the man is too smart for words. He really is. His breadth and depth of knowledge is just crazy. But yeah, as we mentioned before, Scott Guthrie will be back every 3 months, so we can expect him again in the next quarter. And as Shane mentioned just when we were starting in here, we are thinking of doing a longer event, basically in a tech ed / mixed style in here, but we will see how we can get that to work well. And on that, the recording will be uploaded, hopefully successfully, to the Lidnug.org website. Just going to get it up here. There's some of our contact details. Anyways, on Lidnug.org is where the recording will be uploaded to. Also, keep in touch with us. Come join us with the group. I've said that my aim this year is that we're going to reach 50,000 members. I think that's possible. There's a fantastic community growing there now. Also, check out our calendar. There's 3 different types of them. And also subscribe to our Twitter so you can keep up to date even there. Send an email you have to info@lidnug.org. Any questions and suggestions. We're open for pretty much any suggestion. Pretty much, I said. And thanks for showing up.
All right.